Back in April, when the president announced his reciprocal tariffs, the so-called Liberation Day tariffs, a handful of small businesses and a coalition of states filed suit. And for the most part, that was it for most of the year. Much of the business world did not get involved, stayed on the sidelines. Talking with trade lawyers, what they told us was there was a fear of blowback for stepping out against the administration. A number of companies wanted to wait and see what happened, before sticking their necks out. But as the year drew to a close, the Supreme Court heard arguments. There was some sense that perhaps key members of the conservative wing were skeptical and the tariffs might fall. We are suddenly seeing a flood of businesses going into court, wanting to make sure that they've done everything they can to try to get refunds if the court rules against the tariffs in the coming days or weeks. These cases are building off of those original lawsuits. They're not raising new claims. What they're saying is, we agree that the tariffs are unlawful, and if they fall, we think we should get our money back. So it's really a preemptive approach that these companies are taking at this point.
So more than 100 corporate entities are now involved in the legal fight, including some big household company names like Costco, Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company. What's the feeling in legal circles here about how this Supreme Court case might go and what it might mean for some of these people that would like to get some of their money back?
Right, and I should say the vast majority of companies that have sued so far are small businesses that perhaps most consumers have never heard of. But we talked with owners who told us that, the amounts that they're paying, several $1,000s, tens of thousands of dollars, have been a huge hit to their bottom line and their ability to staff, stock goods, and so on. That said, the arguments on November 5th, we saw key members of the court asking very skeptical questions about the lawfulness of the president's use of this 1977 economic emergency powers law to impose the tariffs. And once that happened, there were at least some companies that said, the odds seem at least good enough that we're willing to now take steps to publicly come out against this policy. It's certainly not the case for all. We talked to lawyers who said, some didn't fear the blowback, they just didn't see a need to do this until recently.
Some red headlines crossing the Bloomberg terminal here. Venezuela Assembly President Rodriguez on state television says that Venezuela to release important number of prisoners. That's according to Venezuela Assembly President Rodriguez. So we'll have more reporting on that going forward. Zoe, is there a mechanism for, the government, to return some of these tariffs back to companies that paid them?
So there is precedent for this, just not on the scale that we would expect to see if the Supreme Court strikes down these tariffs. A number of years ago, there was a harbor maintenance tax that the Supreme Court struck down, and that resulted in roughly 4,000 companies going to a U.S. trade court to get refunds for the money that they had paid to the government. According to a court filing in December, looking at roughly 300,000 importers so far that have paid these contested tariffs on something like 30 plus million entries of goods into the United States. So there is a process that the trade court has used before to handle sort of a mass refund process. And there's been some expectation in some of the filings that we've seen that everyone expects that to be the way this unfolds if the tariffs are struck down. That said, the administration could certainly say, maybe there's an administrative process that we want to use that doesn't go through the courts. They haven't proposed anything like that and have mostly discussed this as if they too anticipate needing to go through courts. But the scale and scope of this is unlike what the trade court has had to handle in the past. So it would be, the 1,000 companies that we've seen so far is really a tiny fraction of the importers who might be eligible to at least pursue a claim with the government.